Hey everyone, this is Lee here with Smart Church Solutions. I have a very special guest and friend with me, James Burns, and he is the facility manager at Lake Church.
Yes.
Awesome. And we're just going to talk a little bit of it today about his story, what he got him led into facility management, and kind of his day to day and all that good stuff tied to it. But James, before we get started, would you want to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, and all that good stuff before we dive into some questions?
Yeah, absolutely, Lee. So I am the facility manager here at Lake Church, which we're located in Arlington, Texas. And a little bit about my background. I was born in Vietnam, uh, and my father, he was white, and my mother was Vietnamese, and he worked aviation. So that actually from the fall of Saigon is actually when we left, and from there my dad got a job, and we actually spent the first 10 years of my life in Saudi Arabia. Um, but I didn't really grow up in a big Christian home. My dad was a Baptist and a believer, but we just never went to church, especially being overseas. We never went to church, just there was no church there. And then, of course, when we came back to the United States permanently, um, my dad just always worked, so we just never found a church home. I didn't know who God was, didn't know who Christ was for a good portion of my early upbringing. And I guess somewhere in my 20s, I just kind of felt, there's more out there. There's got to be a higher power or something. Started had questions, but really didn't seek anything out. And I believe God started putting things in my life that was supposed to force me to pursue him, but I ignored them, kind of pushed them away. And the first one was my dad passing away.
Mm.
Um, and I just always felt like, hey, a man's a man. You're supposed to take care of it. That's what men do. And so I kind of ignored that I needed God in my life. After that, and then I went few years, and I was going to UTA at the time, which is University of Texas Arlington, trying to get my Bachelor of Science Mechanical Engineering, and working at the same time. And hang on one second, Lee.
Oh, you're good.
Let me kill this. Sorry about that. Anyways, so yeah, I was going to school, working full time with American, and just loading myself up, kind of to the point where, working uh, kind of more or less, only getting 4, 5, 6 hours sleep at night, and just it was just accumulating. And then after 4 years of my dad passing, I came home one day from school and found my mom. Um, Apparently, she had a heart issue that she didn't inform me about, and so I lost her then, and that was, I believe, my next, sign or message that God was trying to say, hey, look, you can't do this on your own. But I still pushed him away. Like I said, I worked at American, and this was all around right before 9/11 when my mom passed. But well, 9/11 hit, and got laid off from American, and all this stuff was just coming at me, but I kept pushing it away. Like, hey, I'm a guy, I can take this. I understand, I know what I'm doing, and then finally God put me in a position, honestly, where I had no choice, but to get on my knees and seek his relationship. And back in February of 2002, I was driving home after having a few drinks, shooting pool with my buddies, and fell asleep across the center line, and ended up having a head-on collision and killing two people behind it, because I had been drinking. I was charged with 2 counts of intoxicated manslaughter and ended up going to prison, getting sentenced to 12 years in Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And I just remember sitting in the cell as I was waiting to just kind of go to trial and bonding out. There's the Bible sitting in the corner.
Mm.
Didn't know it was the Bible until I picked it up, and then I just started reading it, and all the questions in my head just flowed. Like, who's Christ? Who's God? How's all this interact and tweet? And I had some really really good friends then that I call her my mom now, but uh, she took me in. She was going to, at the time, it's Lake Arlington Baptist Church. She was coming to this church, and I just commented to her, when I was on the phone with her one night, and said, "Hey, I really think I want to go to church with you. I've got a lot of questions." So she actually bonded me out, her and her family, and took a big risk, and put their house up for me, and so I can bond out, and while I was waiting on my trial. And I started coming to Lake Arlington Baptist Church back then for a little bit, part of their singles ministry. And the pastor of the singles ministry kind of sent something about me that first day, and called me up later on and asked if he can come over. And so he came over to where I was staying, and he was just talking, and we just getting in, and he started explaining, about Christ and how he bridges that gap, between us, and um, I ended up accepting Christ that night in my life.
Mm.
And then, like I said, from there, I ended up going to prison after waiting for my trial for about like 6 months or so, and did 12 years. But that's it though, is God was with me the whole time. I mean, um, and I felt at peace when I was there because I knew he was with me. It's kind of hard to explain. People like, how do you have peace when you're going to prison or being in prison, and so I didn't even know it, but as I was in prison, he started doing things for me that actually was training me for service to be a facility manager.
Wow.
So um, I ended up working in the maintenance department as a clerk at the unit that I was assigned. And just by being a clerk, I started learning and identifying, like commercial plumbing parts and electrical parts and what things were called. And I would, every now and then when I'd have my work caught up, I would go out with the technicians, that had inmates, and I'd learn a little bit of plumbing here and a little bit of electrical there, and and then I ended up getting my outside trustee status. And my last 6 years, I actually ended up working outside for a great Christian man. That, I mean, so he was in charge of taking care of the state houses, which the wardens, the majors and stuff. So he just kind of poured into me and my coworker, and like it was like his little personal ministry of teaching people that didn't know how to do anything, to kind of teach them, and I started learning a lot about carpentry, a lot about electrical stuff and plumbing, because we were fixing those houses, and then we did a lot of community service projects around that county that we were in, and everything from putting Christmas lights up to getting their FAA barns ready for their shows. So yeah, really, God was just kind of training me, to be a facility manager. I didn't even realize it, know it, and finally got released in 2013. And with when you have that X, it's really hard to get jobs. People, they have other people to choose from that don't have that on
Yeah.
their record. So my first job literally was cleaning porta potties, and I just told myself, that I'm not going to go back. It's not a lifestyle for me, and so I was doing jobs that most people wouldn't want to do, and after a while, I found a job that I really just despised and hated, and that was I was selling advertising, and
Mm,
I hated going into work. I just, and I had a good relationship with the pastor here at Lake Church, who, like I said, we did a name change and we're now Lake Church. We used to be like Arlington Baptist Church. So when I got out, that was one of the first things I did was plug into Lake Arlington Baptist Church then. And then the head pastor at that time became a really good friend of mine. And um, so he knew that I hated this advertising job, and apparently the facility manager position opened up here. So it's funny how all this happened was, so Eric, our head pastor, he comes up to me. We were doing upward basketball at that time, and I was keeping score, and he was a coach for his daughter's team, and he'd come up to me that Saturday, and he's just like, "Hey, somebody's going to offer you a job this week," and then he just leaves it at that and walks away. And I'm like, what do you mean? But Eric, I knew I wasn't even thinking of a job with the church or anything like that. Was the farthest from my mind, but, and Eric knows a lot of people, we're in the industry here where, we've got a lot of people that work for Lockheed and Bell Helicopter and stuff like that. We've got that in our area. And I'm wondering, hey, man, he knows I love aviation and stuff. Maybe, with my background, with mechanical engineering, and trying to finish that degree up. Maybe that's what he's talking about or something. Anyways, my little hamster brain was just racking, going 100 miles on a wheel in there, trying to figure out what he was talking about. Then the next day in service, the executive pastor came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to have lunch with you this week." And I wasn't even putting two together. I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure, fine. I'm up for a free meal always, And so we met the next day and we just got to talk, and we're sitting there at lunch, and I'm kind of just doing what I did with you, and my just testimony came out, talking to him, because I wanted to be upfront and let him know, hey, look, I've been down this path, I've done prison time, and I want you I want you to know about that, and it's my story that God's blessed me with about where he's, taken me, and now where I'm at now. And so yeah, after the lunch, he said, "Well, Eric really thinks highly of you, and we want to offer you the facility manager position at Lake Arlington Baptist Church." And I was blown away, wasn't even, thinking that I'd ever work for a church,
yeah.
but, I started thinking then, and that's why I'm saying that, is, I just realized just how God just lined this whole thing up to finally come and serve him, and he's blessed me and given me these talents of working with my hands, and he's blessed me with the knowledge of knowing how to fix plumbing, knowing how to do electrical, and and many other talents, that deals with facility management. He's been training me this whole time, and I wasn't even aware of it,
Yeah.
until finally I get offered this job that's serving his kingdom, at the capacity of being a facility manager at one of his facilities here, so man, it's
Yeah.
just been a blessing just to have this whole ride that I've been on.
No, and that's amazing. I mean, a lot of what we talk about on these kind of interviews is how facility management at churches is really a calling. And it's cool to see how kind of for you, it's almost gone totally full circle where it's like you had the blessing and God led you to the church through the people he connected you with and those kind of things. But also, I think a big role of a facility manager that a lot of people forget because they do it every day is, what you're doing is you're eliminating distractions as much as you can for your first time guest. You're making sure the heat's working, you're making sure it's clean, you're allowing it and creating the receptivity for them to receive Jesus on site at a much higher level. And I think a lot of people kind of miss that. So it's cool to see outside looking in that now you're having that impact on others. And I think God took you through what you went through for that purpose. But as you were talking, I think you mentioned something in terms of like your time in prison, I think led you to some habits or to some knowledge that helped you later accumulate the role to be a facility manager. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and some of the experiences that led up to preparing you, that God took you through to prepare for that kind of position?
Yeah, so for example, like I said, the maintenance department position, and I was a clerk, which is the office guy. So for starters, that's where I actually learned the first knowledge of what a CMMS was.
Mm.
You know, so now the state of Texas, they had their own CMMS system, and work order system, that by far is terrible. But it's what they had. So just learning how to understand what a CMMS is and was, and how it really can streamline a facility manager's day is amazing, because I mean, you have everything right there and it's tracked. Everything from your inventory and what you want to keep on inventory, whether it's light bulbs to plumbing parts, or diaphragm kits, for the Sloans, whatever it is, you've got it right there to where, hey, you've got an inventory. You even could create, the reorder threshold, where it's like, hey, if I get down to 5, make sure you notify me so that I know to reorder this type of stuff. So it's not that hard, like everything's on pen and paper, and you got to try to memorize everything or keep a calendar, that's handwritten. You've got a tool now that literally um, can can uh, create more time for you during your day.
And for some of our listeners too, could you explain what a CMMS is, just if some of them don't know?
Yeah, so it's a computer maintenance managing system, um, basically, and most of them are going to allow you to generate work orders, track work orders, track your inventory, um, keep up with your equipment. If you want to label your equipment, it's available right there for you to physically say, hey, that's RTU, whatever number you want to give it, and that way you can sit there and truly get down to the nuts and bolts of, your life cycle system, and how you want to handle, like, okay, well, I want to make sure I'm looking at these, and in 10 years I may have to replace them, but you've got that track record for each equipment right there at your hands, versus trying to find it, in a filing cabinet, and trying to find out, hey, when did I actually buy that? You've got it right there at your fingertips, and it's just streamlines being a facility manager, to the extent that it opens up, more time for you to do, a lot of other stuff.
I assume your degree also had a pretty big play into your knowledge and everything else involved with being a facility manager. Would you mind talking about, or maybe it doesn't at all, would you mind talking a little bit about that too?
Yeah, so I'd never finished my degree. God, like I said, God had a different plan for me, and it was in engineering. But yes, correct. There's a lot of, well, so engineering is a lot of just learning how to learn. Um, so when you get an engineering degree, you actually learn your job when you get hired from whatever company you're going to be hired by, most of the time. It's just a basis of giving you the backbone of what you need to be an engineer, making sure you have the proper math, science, and engineering core courses that allow you to know more. So on that though, that backbone of just knowing how to learn and knowing how, because that's the deal, as a facility manager, you never stop learning. You're always constantly keeping up with technology, and you're always constantly, and that's what makes it such a challenge, and at the same time so rewarding, and you know not monotonous, is you are always learning. You always are learning what's new out there. How can I automate this if I want to? How, what are what are some of the new technologies in cameras, what are some of the new technologies out there, dealing with software, so it's just always, something that you're always learning and learning, and just that background in engineering, of course, the background also of engineering, and just, you know, knowing certain things that, like about, like HVAC system, and the systems, and how, refrigerant interacts with, in a HVAC system, or some things, or just different weights and loads, if you're doing, if you're doing structural type stuff, um as an FM, we don't normally do a whole lot of the background engineering stuff, but it allows for me also, though, if I'm hiring contractors that, you know, they don't know my background. So when they sit there, and if they think, it's a good way that, they can't blow smoke at me, because, I can sit there and go, I've got an engineering background. You're kind of like telling me something that, so that's helped me in a lot of ways there. So
Yeah, that makes sense. So let me know if I'm getting the timeline correct. You accepted the job around what, like 2013? Was that?
no, that's when I got out,
That's
4
when you
years
got it.
later. So
Okay,
I accepted the job in 2018.
that's awesome. So how has it been, I guess since you got hired, what have you learned about, because you really got put into a place of like really awesome leadership, especially at a church your size. Like how, what have you kind of learned throughout the process, not just about facilities, but about people, about God, about everything else? I'd love to hear just kind of about your path from where you came from leading into this awesome position now.
Sure. Now, so with that being said, so one of my biggest struggles, Lee, honestly, when I first started working here, and it's still a struggle to today, is what I realize is a job as a church staff member versus secular world are night and day difference. The same job, but in reality, they're different because of being a church facility manager. You're going to handle things a lot differently than a secular world facility manager. And what I mean by is, what you're taught and everything like that, to save money and stuff, it's like a no-brainer. In secular world, you're going to go ahead and do it, because hey, it saves it. But when you're dealing with church and people and feelings, and how this interact, or how this action may reflect on somebody and their feelings or whatever, you got to step back and slow down, and before you make that decision, and you may not even get to make that decision once you weigh out, well, we can't do that because of this, so those are some of my struggles, is just dealing with, the fact that, hey, this is logical, this is a no-brainer, why are we not doing this? And then when you
Yeah.
kind of get back to the nuts and bolts of what's really behind it, it's just all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, this church member, they donated a bunch of money towards this, and blah blah blah, and so those are some things that I've struggled with, as far as, um because I'm so used to that secular world thinking, where it's just like, and it's all about money, and the bottom line is all about money, where when you're on a church staff, it's way bigger than the money aspect of it. It's about, relationships. It's about building those relationships, keeping those relationships. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then so I kind of went on a tangent on that. So what else were you saying with that question?
Yeah, just kind of like how is your mind shift kind of changed and evolved as you've been in this position of leadership as a facility manager, just around people, around your knowledge of facilities, around your relationship with God, kind of all those components.
Okay, so yeah, so like I said, I mean, the biggest thing on those things is that relationship aspect. So one thing I always try to do, even with my vendors, is like, hey, I want to build. I don't want somebody to just come into my facility and just fix and leave. I want a partner. I want that vendor. That, hey, you're welcome on a Sunday. I want you to be here on Sunday, and I want you to know that Lake Church one appreciates that you've come out and served our church. But at the same time, we want you to know, hey, if you don't have a church home, you're welcome here at Lake Church. We want you to show up, and I've had vendors take me up on that offer,
Cool.
have come to our church, and some of them have made it their home, and so that's been a real one. It's part of the ministry that I try to do here,
Right.
you know, um, just let them know, that as a facility manager, I'm also, got my own ministry as well. That's some things, that I try to well, I also try to make sure my staff here knows that, hey, look, even though I'm not a pastor, I have a ministry here, and one of the things I've also tried to take into that ministry is, so our church we don't hire maintenance guys, um, not quite yet. So I've had part timers, and since I've been here, I've actually had the privilege of really pouring into three guys, um, that when they first started working for me, didn't know a whole. They were a lot just like me when I went into prison. Didn't know a whole lot about maintenance. Didn't know a whole lot about any of that. And I believe that's the things that God's kind of just touched me on is like, hey, look, you know, um, I set you up for success, so why don't you set these guys up for success as well? And I've been able to pour into them, I've my first guy that worked for me is, he's gone on and now works. He's actually joined the military. He's with the Air Force,
Hmm.
but he got to work for me for a year and a half, and I mean, he ended up being just an amazing person as well. And I'm really excited to see what God's doing in his life right now, and really excited to see where God's going to take his future, chapters and stuff like that. But um, you know, more or less what I'm saying is, I've got a gentleman now that I've just started that he's fixing to graduate high school. Doesn't know quite where he wants to lead. He just knows that he's probably going to start going to UTA here in the fall, and after that, he's not sure where God's going to lead him at that. But in the meantime, I'm going to be blessed to kind of try to mentor him the best I can, and how God leads me to do that. So those are some of the ministry aspects of what I'm doing here at Lake Church. On top of just being the facility manager, I'm trying to mentor gentlemen, that want to learn a little bit about, and I always tell them the worst case scenario, if you ever own a home, you'll be able to fix your minor problems, and not have to worry about calling a plumber out to repair something and pay $500 or whatever. So,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
and I love that you're literally building your own ministry out of your job description, which is so cool to me. And I think that's something a lot of facility managers need to take note of, because I have very few facility managers that I have spoken with or know that do that in the same sense that you do intentionally. So I think that's super cool, man. And that's something I think a lot of our listeners really need to take note of, because that's what it's all about, seriously. And what a great way to present leadership in your role by doing so. So I love that. So I guess you shared some of your challenges kind of in your role right now, being a facility manager. Are you facing any other challenges as of right now, or and I'm sure there's just a new one every day, but is there anything you've overcome as of late that'd be really interesting for facility managers to hear? Anything you're dealing with that you're kind of working through that might be helpful for somebody to kind of know about?
so one of the things, honestly, so Lee, when I first took over here, and my executive pastor, he's fairly new here too, so he's my direct supervisor, and so he's only got 1 year ahead of me, so he's been here 1 year more than I have. But So like he always tells me, he's like, man, this is what we've inherited. We've got a little bit older building on one side, blah, 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 so, but man, I mean, we've dealt with everything from being sued
Hmm.
because
Yep.
of a decision I made to we got flooded. So to give a little bit of background, so we were doing an insurance claim on our roof, and we'd finally got the insurance company with the help of our adjuster to finally have a dollar amount that we were comfortable with and everything like that. So I'd only been here at that time about 6 months maybe, and the gentleman that I was taking over for, he's just like, literally the next day he said, hey man, there's a meeting at 3 o'clock, you need to be there. I didn't even know what it was about, so I just showed up for the meeting, and it was about the roof. Well, he was literally exiting out. I mean, that was his last day at the church, and here he is handing me this folder about this roof issue, and I don't know nothing about. So, and then in this meeting is the roofing company that I guess has been doing business with us for a little while. But so we're getting this check, this roofer's wanting to start, and me basically hand him this check. And I just kind of timed out the whole scenario and situation and said, look, this is the first I'm even hearing about what's going on. Let's tap the brakes. Let me educate myself and get up to speed on everything. I'm not making any decisions. So anyways, during that decision making process, this roofer keeps hounding me. I won't get into the stuff he did, but basically, I didn't feel comfortable taking on and using him as my roofing company anymore. And so I told him, hey, we're going a different direction, da da da. And that's the deal. There was no contracts in place. There's, so he ended up suing us behind it.
Wow.
And the sad thing about it is, just because companies like that have the money and dollars to pay an attorney all day long, it ended up being that we had him dead to rights because there was no contract involved. But because he had the money to just fight it and drain our funds,
Yeah.
we were basically forced not to pursue it and just pay him off. And and it's a sad thing. And if you're an FM, that's stuff, hey, look out for those. That's why you want to make sure you're partnering with the right people, and the right, the right businesses, and that's what I love, about the National Association of Church Facility Managers is, all the business partners are pretty much have been used by other facility managers, brothers and sisters throughout the nation, like yourselves. There's several people that are facility managers that, you mentioned eSpace, all of them, light up and say, yeah, we use it, we know it, we love it. It's, so that's the biggest thing, that I've kind of taken away on the challenges, is just making sure you're partnering with that right business, and making sure you've done the process that you think is comfortable enough before you move on, and step up to doing business with them, um, but yeah, like I said, we had a flood. I got, in fact, my first conference with Nacfm, National Association of Church and Facility Managers, get back from Houston on a Friday, and I get a call Sunday, and I meet the fire department up here, and, he's trying to be, I guess, smarty, but he's like, hey, do you want the good or bad news? And I'm more or less, at 6 a.m. There's nothing you're going to tell me it's going to be good news. So he said, well, you don't have a fire, but you got a leak, and basically a toilet supply line had busted overnight and was running continuously, and it flooded like 50,000 square feet of our school that we have here.
Wow.
But that's just it, is because of organizations like Nacfm, I was able to find, that right company to come in within an hour. They sealed off the area, was drying us out, and we still had service,
That's awesome.
and that's the biggest thing is it's just I recommend people to the facility managers out there, like, don't be that person that just comes into work and just does your job and that's it. Come in, get plugged in with the organizations out there like Nacfm, like, your cool solution groups that you have on there, where you can sit there and pick the brains of other facility managers. I mean, because there's guys out there that have a plethora of like knowledge, that's been doing this for like 40 years, and or 20 years or whatever it is. And then there's a lot of us out there that's under 5 years, or there's even some that's literally just starting out,
And
and one thing I've noticed about facility managers is churches, they just end up taking someone that like used to be a youth pastor or a children's pastor and said, hey, now you're a facilities guy, or they'll take somebody that's just because they picked a hammer up before, and put a couple of nails in boards or whatever. Hey, you're our facility guy, and it's a relief that we have organizations that we can sit there like Nacfm and cool solution groups that, we have FMs that are a part of that we can pick their brain, and get more knowledge of how to do our jobs better, for God's kingdom.
and hey, that's what I was going to ask you a little more about. Talk to me about where you've learned some of your knowledge and experience that you've gained outside of course, your past experience and the things we've already talked about. Like, tell me a little bit more about Nacfm, what you like about it, what that engagement's like, or anywhere else that you're looking for content or just trying to expand your knowledge. But especially tell us more about Nacfm.
Yeah, and Nacfm is the professional organization for church facility managers. It's literally called National Association of Church Facility Managers. So I got plugged in with them in 2019. I went to well, I'd started researching about that. So my XP, I have a wonderful XP. And, he said, man, I recommend that you get plugged in with other facility managers, however that looks. If you have to call some of these other churches around here and you guys do a lunch, whatever it is, get plugged in with other facility managers, So I started looking online, and that's where I found Nacfm. And I just kind of was reading it, but I was a little hesitant. And then I went that year in 2019, I went to the Texas Ministry Conference down in Houston. And I ran into a gentleman there that has been doing facility management for 30 plus years, and I just started talking to him about, he was at the Nacfm booth, and I was just talking to him about Nacfm, and I just asked the question, is it worth being involved? And his response to me was, why are you not involved now? And I got to thinking about that, and he was like, why am I not involved now? What's hesitant? What am I, so I joined as soon as I got back to my hotel room that night, and I joined. And then I started researching about like the CP classes that Nacfm offers, which is, extended education that allows a facility manager, one, to get a credential of being a certified church facility manager, but it also digs into, what a facility manager will face in the CP classes. So it's basically a week-long CP class during the spring, and then there's a week-long CP class during the fall, and you got to take both of those. And then after that, you have the choice of either taking a test or writing a paper. And I always recommend writing a paper, but it's all, I know some people are better test takers than writing paper or whatever it is your strong suit is, but you learn a lot about the facility manager role as far as budgeting stuff, capital assets type stuff. You get into creating stuff like SOPs for yourself, PM systems for yourself, just learning how to like make your job so much easier, you know. So I started um, you know, uh, doing my CP classes. But yeah, I had that flood when I went to Houston. But the biggest thing though I learned is when I went to the Houston for the annual conference, you know, and it's like this true brother and sisterhood that belongs there. It's like so last year when we were in Chicago, for example, it's the first night we're having our dinner meet and greet type of dinner the first night, and a buddy of mine that I took, and that's the deal, is these CP classes, you bond with the people in your classes as well, and you get to know them. So when you see them at the annual conference, it's like, hey man, how's everything going, and da da da. But anyways, this gentleman that I took the CP class with, you know, he's like, James, man, you know, look around. Do you notice anything? And I'm just kind of like, I didn't know what he was getting at. And I was looking around. I was like, no, what do you know, he's like, man, it's like a family reunion. You know, and I looked around and he was right. I mean, all these facility managers sitting there and hugging each other and so happy to see each other. You know, of course, you know, it's been 2 years, you know, also, but still though, it's just that's the camaraderie that NACFM and that organization really has. Is so I was telling you about Houston and how I got plugged in there. Is so I ended up going out um, to just to hang out with some guys there that um, were all facility managers, and we were just hanging out at this sports bar and grill, and just kind of talking. And I'm sitting next to this guy, and he's just like, he leans over and he goes, so tell me your story. What do you, what, you know, and and I didn't know who this guy was, but next thing you know, I'm all of a sudden I'm giving him my testimony, and we're sharing, and it ended up being Patrick Hart, who was the president at the time of NACFM. I'm sure you know Patrick. uh, but from then on, it's just like, NACFM is just joined with guys that I know I can call them at any moment and just say, hey, look, here's what I'm dealing with. You ever dealt with anything like this? Or hey man, I just need a prayer. Man, it's been a rough week. Here's what's gone on. Man, can you pray with me? And that's the beauty of NACFM is, and why I back it so much that I'm actually on the board of directors now with NACFM. I'm the director of groups, and I'm really passionate about NACFM because it's not just an organization that you just go to meetings and that's it. It's a true brotherhood. Like just in my area, I know I've got a several of these facility managers where I can call them up, just anytime and and need help. Like during COVID, we were redoing some floors. And I called one of the churches that are members, and I was like, hey, do you guys have a high-speed buffer, And he was like, yeah, because I don't have a lot of floors where I needed a high-speed buffer, but we were redoing carpet, and I was trying to get that glue up. So anyways, I went over there, picked up the high-speed buffer and kept it for about a month or so. They, and that's what it was about. It's about all of us working for God's kingdom together. We have different facilities, but it's all for his kingdom. And NACFM is an amazing way to join FMs together, and get the job done, make it easier for all of us.
I love it. So what's before we and we'll have to end the show here kind of soon, but what's the last piece of advice, or what's something you would tell a facility manager that's struggling right now? And I know this is very high level because they could be struggling with communications to the XP, lack of staffing. They could be struggling with the feeling of feeling of not having the level of importance. I know that's always been a very common struggle for facility managers in certain areas too. But what would you tell somebody who might be struggling a little more with their position?
Right. First thing anytime you're always struggling, remember this: you've got the best rock on your side. I mean, you've got God on your side, you know. So don't forget to always take your problems to him. You know, no matter what it is, he wants to hear it, and he wants you to come to him behind those problems. You know, whether if you're struggling, whatever it is, man, God's there. You know, and then after that, plug into your group, plug into Nacfm. You know, use the knowledge that other facility managers have. You know, um, there are so many guys out there that are just willing to help. You know, like I said, you can call me, you can call, anybody else in that organization. You can sit there and go on Facebook and get onto your forum, or NACFM has a forum. You can go onto theirs, and just express what you're having issues with, and there'll be several people, that are more than willing to sit there and help you if they can. So yeah, that's the biggest thing is, man, always include God in your struggles, and let him know what you're struggling with, because you know he'll help you. That. I mean, I didn't get this far without him in my life, and I make sure that I start every day with him in my life, and I end every day with him in life, and throughout the whole day I'm just always making sure I'm keeping that relationship with him. It's really a minute by minute relationship with God. um
I love it.
so yeah.
It's awesome, man. And what an amazing story to share with people too. I mean, that's just so cool. Again, I shared this in the beginning, but I just love how it's literally turned into a 360. Not within yourself or your heart, but really in terms of the position. I think God has a sense of humor, bringing you back to where he kind of allowed you to see him and eventually give your life to him. It's pretty cool. But well, guys, this is all we have for you today. James, thank you again so much for joining us, man. This was an incredible story and testimony, and I really hope the facility managers out there will get involved with communities like NACFM, expand their knowledge, join the Smart Church Solutions or the Church Facility Management Solutions Facebook group. Just get involved, because just like James said, that's what it's all about, is coming together and unifying so we can serve God's kingdom, especially in this realm of facilities. But love it. Well, we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.